guys, welcome back to another episode of Guns and Guitars, and today I'm going to show you how I transform this cheap guitar kit from the fret wire into a high-end Mosrite style guitar. As you can see, this isn't just the cheapo slab body Johnny Ramone replica that I was going to build. This is more like a full-on Ventures model, and a lot of time and effort went into this build, but not a lot of money. All in all, I have less than $330 total invested in this build, and that's pretty good considering you can't get a Mosrite for less than $1,000 these days, and most of them way more than that. So if you guys want to see how I built this as well as a good sound demo of it, stick around. I'm Dan, this is Guns and Guitars, let's get started. Now before we get started here, I'm just going to warn you that this video is going to be a lot longer than my typical dream build tutorials usually are, and that's because I'm listening to your guys' feedback in the comments. You guys have said that you feel like I gloss over some of this stuff a little bit too fast, so what I'm doing here is I'm going to spend more time in the workshop describing to you exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Of course, that means this video is going to be quite a bit longer. So instead of 10 to 15 minutes, this build video is going to be more like 30 or 35 minutes. So if you decide you're getting bored of hearing me talk or explain what I'm doing with this build, you can always jump to this spot right here, which is where I'm going to be demoing the guitar, and you can hear the before and after tone of the stock kit versus this monster that I've built up. Also in this video, I'm going to spend a little bit less time talking about the products that I use to build this up, because you guys have mentioned in my dream build tutorials that you feel like maybe they're becoming more like a commercial for the products that I use so that I can make affiliate income, and that's not the case. That's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. So I'm going to talk less about where I got the products and the prices. All that information will be down in the description if you're interested. Now, I totally see where you guys are coming from on this. I don't really agree, because I feel like half of building up a budget guitar is knowing where to find the best deals and knowing what inexpensive products are actually of a good value. But I do understand that you don't want this to be a commercial, you want it to be a build tutorial, and I get that. So we're gonna spend more time building, less time talking about the products, and I'm just gonna take you on a journey of how I got from a stock kit to this beautiful tone monster right here. So let's go ahead and rewind back to the beginning in my workshop when I decided to start taking on this project. Hey guys, great news. I'm finally getting to building up this Mosrite kit. Not Mosrite. 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 Who pronounces it Mosrite? Gosh, what an idiot. Mosrite. It's Mosrite. Everyone knows it's Mosrite. Okay. Anyway, I've been putting off this build because I've just not been that excited about it. It's just so boring. I mean, just two pickups, master tone, master volume, three-way switch. Nothing special. It's the Johnny Ramone style slab body, so it doesn't even look like a typical Mosrite Ventures model. I already purchased the pickups to make it an exact Johnny Ramone replica, so I have a Seymour Duncan mini humbucker and a DiMarzio FS-1 there for the bridge. So at this point, I feel like I'm kind of committed to doing it that way. But after I posted the review video, lots of you guys commented that you would actually rather see a typical Mosrite, who would pronounce it Mosrite? Mosrite. You guys wanted to see a typical Mosrite Ventures model. So anyway, I think you guys are kind of onto something with going with a more traditional Mosrite Ventures model that has the nice carved top, the angled pickups, the cool little tremolo that they have. So I'm actually just going to combine the two. I don't exactly know how I'm going to do it. I know I need to bevel or carve those edges. Probably the biggest hang up is going to be the massive route that's in this thing for the electronics. We're going to cut this neck at an angle so that we can install the pickup at an angle. And then I'm going to make some pickup plates that hopefully help cover the body route a little bit. And then we're going to redesign the pick guard to match a little bit better. So it may not be a perfect Mosrite Ventures model, but it should be pretty close. Also, we're going to cut off Bart Simpson up here and make it more, well, it's not going to look like a Mosrite headstock. It's going to look like my design of a headstock, which I'm actually pretty excited about. So I'm going to bring you along on this journey, and let's see what happens. I wanted to cut the base of the neck off at an angle so that I could mount my pickups at an angle. So I just drew a straight line and chopped it off with a saw real quick. That should get us the nice neck angle that I'm looking for. Now I can work on making my templates for my pickup rings and my pick guard. And here I'm just doing the good old guess and check method. I'm kind of drawing out an idea of what I want my pick guard to look like and then trimming it to the exact size that I need it to be. And if I trim off a little too much, I just tape on a little bit more paper and try again. There's probably a better way to do this, but this is the way I do it. And then now that it's done, I can go ahead and trace around it so that I know where I can put my bevel without overlapping the pickguard. After I made that pickguard template, I had a good idea of what area it was going to be covering, so then I was able to sketch in where I want my carve to go. And I've been trying to figure out, kind of brainstorm a method of how to do this correctly, and I just don't really know. So I'm gonna do it my own way. Look, there's the right way, the wrong way, and the Dan Thompson way. The Dan Thompson way is probably the wrong way, but faster. To carve out that area, I'm gonna use an angle grinder. So here I have an angle grinder and it's rigged up with an 80 grit sanding flap disc. So we're gonna go ahead and just take this thing and start grinding away at this body. And like I said, I don't know if this is the right way to do it. I don't know if it's gonna work. It might just ruin everything and I might be ordering a new kit from the footwear. But let's see what happens. As you can see here, the sanding flap disc is working awesome for creating that bevel. It works a little bit too awesome. In fact, it left a lot of really deep grooves that I had to go back and file out with a wood rasp. So if you decide to go with this method, just be sure to be very careful because you can ruin a project really fast. But look at that, that looks pretty good. Okay, now I can cut out my pickguard and pick up mounting rings. I'm using 1/8 inch birch plywood that I picked up at a craft shop, and this was just leftover scrap that I had, but you can get a 24 by 12 inch sheet for about $3 or $4 at your local craft shop. I'm just routing out the pickup cavities, using my Dremel tool to clean it up, and I used a jigsaw to cut out the pickguard and the pickup rings. And then a real quick test fit, line up my pickups where they're supposed to go. Now I'm gonna cut the headstock with my jigsaw, and then again, touch it up with my Dremel to get it the exact shape that I want. I know that I'm using a lot of different tools in this build tutorial, and if you're interested in any of these tools, again, the links will be in the description. I'm not gonna talk about them much here in this video though. All right, this build's starting to look more like a Mosrite. As you can see, I'm pretty happy with how this bevel turned out. It's got a few little tool marks in it that I'm gonna probably have to spend a little more time sanding to get out. Went ahead and reshaped the headstock. Obviously does not look like a typical Mosrite headstock. It's my own custom design, but it doesn't look like Bart Simpson's head either, so that's a win. The last thing that I wanted to show you guys, I plugged up these holes for the tailpiece because I'm not going to be doing a hardtail. I'm going to do a typical Mosrite style tremolo system. So I went ahead and plugged those up. I just shoved some dowel rods in there with some wood glue, hammered them in, and then sanded them down smooth. And then I purchased this Moslike tremolo system. This tremolo system I got on eBay for like $70, and it's called Moslike. It's a knockoff of the Mosrite style tremolos. It's really cool. Comes with a nice bridge with some roller saddles on it, so listen to that. I don't know if you'll be able to hear that. I'll put it up by them closer to the microphone. Nice, smooth rolling action on those saddles. A problem was that the posts that it came with were way too small to fit in these post holes, so I would have had to fill and re-drill those, but I actually checked with the Tune-O-Matic style bridge, and the eye-to-eye measurements on these two bridges were exactly the same. And while these obviously were much smaller posts compared to these, I was able to drill this out so that it does fit on the existing posts. So I could just leave the original posts and the original post holes, and that should sit just fine there. I've been really wanting to try out one of these tremolos, and this is obviously the best project for it. So I've done a complete test fit of every component that I've made or purchased for this build to make sure that everything fits together nicely before I start the finishing process. As you can see, I have my Moslike tremolo and bridge system in place, and at the minimum depth setting, my string action is still way too high. Now, I don't really care much for shimming the neck to lower the action because, as you guys know, I like to do those 45-degree angle support screws for a little increased sustain, maybe. I don't know if it actually works, but I just like to do it because I think it's fun. And so typically what I would do is actually just countersink these posts to set it down even lower to lower the action. But I'm not going to do that this time because if you look at this tremolo, the high E string right here actually sits pretty high. So if I lower this down, I don't think there's going to be enough leverage there to hold it in its saddle. As you can see, it kind of just barely sits in the saddle as it is. Another thing that I wanted to point out to you is once I had this installed, these roller saddles on the G and B strings are actually giving me a little bit of issues. The rest of the strings are fine, but these I don't know if you can hear that, but it kind of rattles around. Now, I don't know if that's because they don't have the aggressive angle that they need because my action is too tall. So first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna attempt to shim the neck. And it's something that I've not talked about a lot on this channel, so I wanted to take some time to do that. So we're gonna shim the neck to lower the action instead of lowering the bridge this time. And I'm gonna hopefully find out a way to do that as well as keep my 45-degree angle support screws because I really do like those and I think they are beneficial. So I wanna give you a real quick, real life demonstration of what shimming a neck actually does. So for this illustration, I've removed the 2 bottom screws from my neck and I've loosened the 2 top screws. And as you can see, this is our ridiculously tall action that we don't want. So when you shim a neck, you're actually just lifting the heel of the neck pocket to move the neck at more of an angle like this, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and press down. So you see, we lifted the heel just a little bit and now our action is really small. So I went ahead and removed the neck. So this is our neck cavity right here. And I went ahead and just detuned the strings and left them attached because I'm gonna attach the neck in just a minute to test our shim to see if it's the right size. This right here is 1/32 of an inch basswood. You can buy sheets of basswood at your local craft shop for really inexpensive, and 1/32 is the thinnest that they sell. And I buy this stuff because I like to use it to make tighter fitting neck pockets. So to stick like down here to line the sides to make for a nice tight fit. Sometimes if I install a nut piece too low, I'll use this to shim it back up and then just I'll glue it on and file it down to the right size that I need. So 1/32 of an inch is probably going to be too thick for most neck shimming jobs, okay? A little goes a long way when it comes to shimming a neck. What most people do is they'll cut up a little tiny piece of sandpaper to stick down there, and if that's too thin, they'll fold it in half and that kind of thing. But I think a little does go a long way, but we've got a long way to go. So we're gonna start with 1/32 of an inch basswood. I'm gonna cut it to fit the heel of this neck pocket, and then we'll bolt that neck back on. So now the neck is back installed and screwed down tight, and as you can see, our action, much better, okay? It's actually too low. We've got some fret buzz now, which is a good thing, because now we can adjust these bridge saddles, bring that up a hair to where it's going to be perfect, and that gives us some adjustability. So if we do take this guitar to a gig in another state or something where the temperature or climate messes with it, that gives us room to adjust our bridge up and down to accommodate. So now I can go ahead and raise this up. That's actually pretty good. I'm gonna leave it right there for now. Still a little bit of rattling at the bridge, and again, I'm gonna let it go for now. If I do need to replace it, I have those Tune-O-Matic style roller bridges that I really like. And so if I need to, I'll just replace it with that. But I love the way this one looks, and I think it's gonna be really good for tuning stability. So we'll just have to wait and see if that rattle works itself out or not. Now that my shim is the correct height, I went ahead and glued it in just using some wood glue, and I also took this as an opportunity to fill in the gap that I created by cutting off the base of my neck by just shimming it up with some more of that 1/32 basswood and gluing it in place. After the glue dried, I went ahead and drilled my 45-degree angle holes for my neck support screws, and I don't know exactly how much that helps, but I will say that this guitar sustains better than any electric guitar that I've built so far, and I think that's because I took the extra time to fill in that gap with some basswood shims, and I added those support screws. So once I had those holes drilled, I went ahead and sanded it down to get it ready for color. And I had asked you guys on social media what color you thought I should make this guitar. And Chris Cromarty commented on Facebook that he wanted to see a teal to cobalt burst with a white pickguard. And I thought that sounded like an awesome idea. So I went for it. But my wife had a better idea. Rather than doing a typical burst, she thought maybe it would be cool to do a top to bottom gradient, because you don't see that a whole lot on guitars. So I went ahead and went with her advice. So Chris, I used your color, but I used my wife's advice. Instead of a burst, we're gonna do a top to bottom gradient. So for that, I'm just using royal blue RIT dye, which as you can see goes on a little bit purple, but to make it blue, what you gotta do is you kinda gotta sand it back with some fine grit sandpaper. So as you can see here, I'm sanding pretty heavily at the top to make that gradient, but you can see how the purple kind of slowly turns blue as you sand it. So I'm using 220 grit sandpaper, and now I'm gonna go over the top of it with aquamarine RIT dye. And that's gonna get us that teal to cobalt gradient that we're looking for. And once I was done with that, I went ahead and sanded it down again with some really fine 600 grit sandpaper, again, just to smooth out that gradient a little bit and make the guitar a little bit more blue in color overall. Lastly, I went ahead and finished it with some tung oil, as I always do. For the pickguard and mounting rings, to get it the white color, I used a Minwax Marshmallow color stain, and it's a water-based stain, which I don't really care for as much as the oil-based stains, but it gets the job done, and it does do kind of a creamy, vintage, white ivory sort of color. All right, real quick, I'm just going to level and crown the frets, as I always do, and this is my new ultra-fast method. Of course, I'm in a time-lapse, so it looks really, really fast, but I have a video dedicated to the actual process that I use for this method, and it is super fast. And now I'm trying out something new. I usually use aluminum foil to shield my pickup cavities when I'm using single coil pickups, but some scientists have commented on my previous builds that aluminum foil does not pick up RF frequencies nearly as good as copper foil. So I'm using a copper foil tape that does have a conductive adhesive, and I'm just cutting it and sticking it into the cavity right there. And how much better this is going to work over regular aluminum foil and spray adhesive, I have no idea. The real test will be at the end of this month when I'm playing at a church that meets in a warehouse, and they have the worst 60 cycle hum I've ever heard in my entire life. So that is going to be a great testing ground to see if the copper foil is any better than the aluminum foil. And then once I know that, I will report back to you guys. Now for pick guards, instead of using a tung oil finish, I do like a little more scratch resistant finish. So I usually use a Minwax spray-on polyurethane, and I usually use the satin sheen finish. This time I accidentally picked up a can of semi-gloss. The labels look identical. So of course I didn't realize that until after I already sprayed it on, and I was bummed because I have a nice matte finish from this tung oil, and now I have a semi-gloss pickguard. Now I believe the difference between a true artist and everyone else is the ability to cover up your mistakes. So what I did is I just took some ultra fine 600 grit sandpaper and sanded lightly to try to remove some of that sheen a little bit so that it has a more dull look. And what I ended up with was not necessarily what I was going for, but I think was actually cooler. And I'm gonna hold it up to the camera so you can see a little bit closer, but you can see where the wood grain soaked up the gloss sheen and where the sandpaper removed the matte sheen, which gave it a really cool ivory sort of texture. So it turned out really awesome. I'm really happy with it, but it wasn't what I set out to do. I just sort of got lucky. All right, guys, now we are on to my personal favorite part of any guitar build, and that's the wiring. And you guys know that I love to add in some extra wiring tricks when I'm wiring up my Dream guitars, because I like my guitars to have a little bit more versatility and to look a little bit different than something you would just buy right off the shelf. I think that's the whole point of building a guitar yourself, is you get to make it the way you want. And so we're gonna add in some cool tricks. So we've got our really hot pickup setup, okay? We got our Seymour Duncan mini humbucker, and I measured that at around 11K, and then we've got this DiMarzio FS-1, which is overwound to a ridiculous 14K output. So these two pickups together are gonna be really beefy, really mid-rangey, really one-trick pony, okay? Very punk rock, right? That's why Johnny Ramone used these pickups, right? Actually, mostly he just used this bridge pickup. Some people say he didn't even have the neck pickup connected. I don't subscribe to that logic. I haven't seen any credible source that actually says that he didn't have this one connected. I don't know why he would replace the neck pickup with such an expensive pickup if it wasn't going to be connected at all. So whether or not he actually used it when playing live or recording, who knows? Probably not, honestly, but I do think it was connected, and I spent a lot of money on that pickup, so I'm gonna connect it. But we got our typical three-way pickup selector switch, master volume, master tone, and then as you can see, I've wired in, well, I haven't wired them yet, but a couple of mini toggle switches, okay? We got a red one and a blue one. The blue one is a double pull, double throw, on, just a 2-position switch, and I'm gonna wire that to be a reverse polarity for this FS-1 pickup. So because it's so hot, these two pickups together to get kind of more of that surf, twangy guitar tone that the Mosrite Ventures model is known for, aside from Johnny Ramone's Crazy Thick tone. That phase switch, making this pickup out of phase with this one, is going to thin out and twang out the sound a little bit. So it won't be just that beefy, mid-rangey tone that's so punk rock. We will actually get kind of more of a Ventures sort of surf tone out of this. And then this front pickup, we've got another double pull, double throw, but this is a 3-position on, off, on switch. And that one, I'm just gonna do my favorite humbucker wiring hack because I love coil splitting, and this one is even easier than coil splitting. What it is in the middle position, it'll be series operation. Up will be north coil only, down will be south coil only. And I do have a wiring tutorial on how to wire a humbucker that way, so feel free to check that out if you want to see how to do that. But it's stupid simple. The summary is just that you're going to connect your hot up here, your ground down here, and then the 2 wires that would normally be soldered and taped together, untape them and solder them to that center lug, and that's it, you're done. The phase reversal switch, I'm not going to do a tutorial on because, again, it's so easy. Just wire your hot and ground to the middle lugs and your hot and ground to the top lugs going to where they would normally go on the switch. Then these bottom lugs, you're just going to do cross jumpers. So connect your hot to your ground and your ground to your hot. So when it's in the down position, you're reversing the polarity. Super simple, super cake easy. All right, guys, I got this thing all wired up and strung up, and it sounds cool, and all my little wiring hack tricks work as they should the first try, which is shocking. I don't always get it right on the first try. Anyway, so that's awesome, but there's still some things about this guitar that need fixed that are driving me nuts. And the first thing is this bridge. Now, the tremolo is awesome. I've really enjoyed playing with the tremolo, but the bridge itself is not so good. So I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. I'll pick a string. So you can hear it most on the E string, but really it's any of the unwound strings. So the G and the B string also have a rattle, and they don't sustain well, and that's just because these rollers are really loose. And another thing, the tuning stability from this bridge is not awesome, because I'll go ahead and zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about. When I work the action here, you can actually see this whole thing rocks back and forth, which to me kind of defeats the purpose of having roller saddles. So the way it rocks back and forth is actually very similar to the way a typical two-pneumatic bridge works. Well, not necessarily for the whole bridge to rock back and forth, but at least for the saddles to kind of rock back and forth. But with a roller bridge, that thing should be completely stationary to give you as much sustain as possible, and the roller should be what's rolling to give you the tuning stability. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to replace that with a different bridge. And where'd it go? So I'm actually going to replace it with one of these. You guys have seen me use these before on my channel, and it's just a cheapo $10 on Amazon roller bridge that's a direct fit replacement for a two-pneumatic style bridge. Now there's one other thing that's driving me nuts about this kit, and that's the 0 fret. I've had issues with getting kind of a sitar type sound out of the 0 fret nut piece, and that's obviously not the nut piece. I had the original kit nut piece that I had cut down from the bottom, and that wasn't a super good solution. So then I cut this one, and it's just another kit plastic nut piece that I had laying around. And as you can see, I measured and drew how deep the slots needed to go in order to clear the 0 fret. And so I ground them down, and then I went back with some nut files to make the deepest part of each cavity the correct gauge size for the strings. And I'm still having issues, especially with this G string. As you can see here, it just has a really aggressive angle. Both the G string and the D string have really aggressive angles, and they're way the heck up here, and it's a flat headstock, it's not a bent headstock. So they just don't have enough downward pressure to stay in the grooves. So you can see right here, I've replaced it with a graphtec nut. And so I went with graphtec because I love how freaking awesome they are for tuning stability, and the tone you get out of them is actually very similar to a 0 fret. I like the tone much better than a plastic or even a bone nut piece. So I really appreciate the tone on these things, but it's not a direct fit replacement. So this is actually a graphtec nut piece for a Gibson Les Paul, and not just any Les Paul either. It's a Gibson Les Paul that came from the factory with a 0 fret. So you can actually see here that it overlaps the cavity for the nut and actually goes all the way to where the 0 fret is. So it is meant to replace a 0 fret. So where it's pinching the strings is very close to where it would be pinching the strings for the 0 fret. So it should intonate just fine, but in order to get it perfect, I am gonna have to remove that 0 fret. And then also the base of the lip that comes out over the nut slot is actually not radiused. So I'm actually gonna have to file the radius of the fretboard flat in order for this nut piece to work. But I figured, I could keep struggling for hours and hours trying to get these plastic nut pieces to work with that 0 fret, or I could just pay $15 for a graphtec, which I love, and I usually end up upgrading that piece on just about every kit I built anyway. So I am just gonna go with the graphtec. And I'm not sponsored or endorsed by graphtec, but I probably should be at this point. I've used their stuff so much. Okay, this guitar is finally put together, and the new bridge and nut piece completely solved those tuning issues as I knew that they would. In fact, if you watch me work the tremolo arm right now, you'll see that that bridge stays in perfect place. It does not rock back and forth the way it was before. So that is awesome, and it's all wired up and ready to rock and sounds awesome. But before I demo it for you, a real quick commercial break for my own personal merchandise. If you are watching this video on a desktop browser, you probably noticed my new Teespring merchandise shelf right below the video. Feel free to check that out, where you can buy this t-shirt as well as a brand new design. If you guys are watching in the mobile app, I'm gonna put an iCard up there if I can figure out how to do that. That will link to my merch store. Otherwise, I'm just gonna be pointing at nothing over there, and that's really embarrassing. So hopefully I figured out how to do that, and so you can check out that merchandise if you're interested in supporting me, supporting the channel, and seeing more videos like this. That is an excellent way to do it. Okay, it's time to demo this thing, and as always, gonna be recording directly into Logic Pro using my trusty Focusrite Scarlett USB interface, and I'm just gonna be recording directly into my old project file of this guitar setup stock. So I'm gonna be using the exact amp simulation settings that I was before. I'm not tweaking anything, and we're gonna be playing more or less the same song. It's not the exact same song because Google's computers were smart enough to figure out that I was playing a Ramones tune, and they decided that I needed to share my ad revenue with Warner Music Group as a result. And I'm good with that. I would give half my ad revenue to the people who own the rights to that music, even though 98% of that video was original content and only 2% was a small clip of me playing that song. I would totally understand. Artists gotta make money. However, Warner Music Group decided to take 96% of my ad revenue. I'm not okay with that. That's not sharing, okay? So I changed up a few chords, I changed up the melody, hopefully enough to trick Google's computers into thinking this is a new song. Probably not. I'll probably still be sharing my ad revenue with it, but instead of playing the song I Want to Be Sedated, I'm gonna play my new tune that I call I Don't Want to Share My Ad Revenue with Warner Music Group. Okay, here goes, check it out. Okay, that was all fun and everything, and pretty much the reason why I had to do that is because that song was the only samples that I had recorded of this guitar before I did all these upgrades. So, but it doesn't really show off what all these little switches and stuff do, nor does it show off the tuning stability of the tremolo and stuff. So I'm gonna get started with that, and I'm gonna show you this is the #1 reason why I replaced this bridge with this cheap roller bridge, and why I replaced the nut piece with a graphtec nut piece. The tuning stability on this thing is awesome. I didn't change to locking tuners or anything. I don't even have them wound my special locking tuner way that I talk about. They are just wound regular, and I'm gonna demonstrate for you right now. And let's play a D chord, because D chords are the ones that are hardest to stay in tune for whatever reason. So let's use middle pickup, okay? Okay, now full depth of the tremolo right here. So you can hear that I'm tapping my pick guard with the tremolo. Kind of like a THX effect there. Pull it sharp too. Just stays perfectly in tune. I mean, no tuning issues whatsoever. So, $10 roller bridge, $15 graphtec nut piece. Seriously, these are the best value mods for any guitar kit. I highly recommend you do them. Now I'm going to demo for you this phase switch right here. And like I said, I installed this because I knew that these pickups were extra hot. And so adding the phase switch would scoop out the mids quite a bit and just make it an overall brighter, twangier tone for surf style music, which, I mean, this guitar, if you look at it, it's very surfy. So let's go ahead and demo that for you right now. We're going to go ahead and start with in phase. And as you can see, still using that Marshall half stack that we used to record the Johnny Ramone stuff. It's just a little too dark and grungy for surf music, but I'll demo it for you anyway. So surfy. I love it. This is probably the first phase switch that I've installed where I actually really like the tone of the reversed phase. So typically it makes it a really lo-fi effect and kind of loses a lot of bass, but here it's totally a usable tone, okay? It doesn't really lack bass, it just kind of scoops the mids and makes it a little brighter, kind of like I was saying before. Totally a usable tone. And now let's hear this coil splitting feature that I did. Again, in the middle, we have our standard series operation, dark humbucker sound. Flip it up, we got the north coil. Flip it down, south coil only. It's really a lot more noticeable when you're playing single coil styles of music. So if we were doing like some bluesy rock, like you guys know that I absolutely love, something like this. We'll play it in series here with the humbucker first. All right, now we'll do south coil. Now the north coil. So, yeah, series, south coil, north coil, so I love both the south coil and the north coil. They both kind of have their own charm, especially when they're mixed with the bridge pickup. So that series. Now if we isolate the north coil again, it gives that cool kind of Lincoln Brewster tone, which I love. I think Lincoln Brewster is the man. Oh, so freaking cool. I wish I could play that like as good as he does. Just gonna remind you guys, I'm still using the Marshall Stack amp simulation here. I haven't changed any of those settings, so these switches, man, they get a lot of versatility out of this guitar, and I haven't even had to touch my amp settings, so that's pretty freaking cool. I'm really impressed with this thing. Well, this guitar is freaking sweet, and I love how big and beefy the tone is. I love the versatility from the switches, and I would for sure be keeping this guitar for myself, except for I have a rule that I can only keep one of my custom built guitars at a time, and I have to sell the rest. That's how my business is a business. Okay, businesses have to make money, and unfortunately, while I would be keeping this one if it were up to me, I'm not quite done with this Jazzmaster right here. Okay, I've got more plans. I want to make some more wired pickguards for it to make a video on, and so that means I'm gonna have to let this one go. So I'll put a link in the description if you guys are interested in buying this exact guitar that I just demoed for you. Also, all these products that are sitting behind me are not there because I'm getting paid to promote them. I'm not getting paid to promote them. Those are just the products that I've gotten for free to review on my channel. Every single product that I've gotten ever since I started this channel, sitting on that shelf, waiting for a big giveaway at 100,000 subscribers. And I'm gonna be giving away a guitar kit as well. That's right, I got the Fretwire to sponsor this giveaway, so we're gonna be giving away a guitar kit to one lucky person. So if you wanna know how to enter that, just stick around, subscribe if you wanna see me turn that Les Paul into a dream guitar. Okay, that one back there, that's the next on the chopping block, so hit that subscribe button if you wanna see me transform that thing into a high-end guitar. And don't forget to let me know in the comments, I really want your feedback. Do you like this longer form of video, or is it too long and you wanna see my shorter scripted videos that I've done in the past? You guys need to let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Dan, this is Guns and Guitars, and I will see you next week.